hey, Hada, what's happening in Melee? Or we're workshopping the title. But this is a result of me saying, I want to have a co-host for the podcast. And the truth is that from the beginning, I've been thinking it would be really cool to have somebody to bounce off with on a regular basis. But scheduling is tough. Doing it for free is tough. However, we're going to try this out today, see how it goes, all that fun stuff. Hada, it is very, very cool to have you here once again. We're going to talk about what's been happening in Melee this very week, a little bit inspired by Dark Gen X, a little bit inspired by people like talking about what's going on. The discourse of Melee is always fun, but thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you so much. It's beautiful Saturday morning here in sunny Colorado. Had a crazy snowstorm like 2 days ago, but it's typical Denver. Like it'll dump down snow for 2 days, and then you could go and realistically go for a jog with your dog in the park like 6 hours later. So it's a beautiful day. Happy to be here, and we got an excellent pantheon of topics here. It's been a very active week in Melee, that's for sure.
Yes, it's not every day, or I should say it's not every week, that we have FlyQuest come in, for instance. So I love this particular piece of news. Why don't you go ahead and intro this to us?
Yeah, of course. FlyQuest, of course, the very recent sponsor of our very own Kadoran. And like many other past Summit competitors, will get a pretty significant sponsorship moving into an event like Summit because people want to get their big up and coming name brands out for such a big invitational event. It's very illustrious. So FlyQuest, of course, jumping on that trip, very similar to how Luminosity jumped on and sponsored Ginger for the first time right before he went to a Summit. FlyQuest shelling out some pretty big esports dollars for Kadoran as well as the rest of the TO staff. So shout outs to Iggy as well, Iggy Neves. Excellently run TMT. And I believe we're going to have a $1,000 pop bonus for the foreseeable future for the TMT series. So not only is that a huge bump in revenue, of course, we have another huge name and a big list of competitors coming out for this week's TMT. And so the big thing that I am curious about is, as this becomes a standard practice, like, are we going to see more esports organizations start to shell out big pop bonuses? I think, not to be a little biased for myself, but I know that All Chat has been putting out, 200, 250, 300 every single week for our salt mine. And it's really shown out because if you come back and look at the salt mine top 16s, the names keep showing up. The top 6 teams keep showing up. It's not just the top 4 that's going to be top 8. It's all the way to top 16. So if you get top 16 of the salt mine, that's a huge thing. So if you're an up-and-coming player, it's a great way for not only get those names started, but as an incentivizing factor, not just for the players. How do you think this is going to develop as TMT starts to move forward?
And I think that if there was a world where an esports org would go to an IRL weekly and say, we want to infuse a $1,000 pop bonus, everybody would be super excited, but there would be a certain amount of exclusivity because if you live on the East Coast, you are not going over to the West Coast every week just to get a shot at 500 or 750, whatever first place wins, right? And realistically, if there's 100 entrants, if there's 200 entrants, whatever it happens to be, 200 for a weekly would be insane. But if there's going to be more than just you and your buddies there, of course, it's going to be hard to be realistic about winning an event. You're going to see a familiar name like Kadoran or S2J or a name like Ginger, Bobby Big Balls taking such an event. So what's really cool about the fact that it's online is that it sort of answers the question that a lot of people have been asking since Slippy became relevant back in June of 2020 when it dropped, was what will online events look like as we continue to integrate back into IRL stuff? And I think that if you were to be one of the people who were saying, I think first of all, not only are online events still really important and that they should happen, but I think we should put big money behind them. Most people would scoff and say, save that for the IRL stuff. I think it's really cool that FlyQuest is doing this. It will really help to continue to, like you said, it'll build those storylines for up-and-coming players, especially for players like Kadoran, Hungrybox, or not Mango or Zane, but maybe Don't Test Me. Maybe we see Mango Sheik sometime down the line. He's always talked about doing a secondary in a tournament, but it hasn't actually done that at all, to my knowledge, in his streaming. He always just streams friendlies, but it'd be really cool to see stuff like that because you get a bit of a challenger versus the established player. Shout outs to FlyQuest for putting, if they were starting it in the beginning of January and going all the way through to December, theoretically that's $50,000. So that's really,
Yeah.
really cool. Shout out to FlyQuest for doing that. And I think Kadoran is probably a really big reason why it happened. Signs with the org, and then probably from the beginning, if I had to guess, started talking to FlyQuest about things that they can do to help him, help the community as well. And I think somebody was saying this on Twitter. There's probably Blur or Topicants. There's a really big difference between what somebody like a League of Legends player gets paid versus what Melee gets, and that's true, of course, but they sort of view this as it's not a big cost like some of us in the Melee community might think it is. It might just be sort of a big, well, of course it is big in that sense, but compared to $1 million, 50,000 is it's a lot less. It becomes a lot less money. There's obviously going to be one that you would choose versus the other, but if we get even that much for an online weekly, I think that's great.
I 100% agree with you, and of course, I've actually had that conversation. Just changing out the league contract versus a melee contract. And Tafo actually had a really great tweet in the last couple of days saying if you're trying to invest in an esports player, Smash players are the best players for a loyalty aspect. For Cloud9, now that Sneaky is no longer a tenured Cloud9 member, Mango is the longest tenured Cloud9 esports player. Hungrybox is up there for the longest tenured Team Liquid player. Leffen's up there for one of the longest TSM tenured players, and SFAT I think might be one of the longest tenured CLG players, unless you're counting Hotbit. Not Hotbit. God, who's their CEO? It's shoot, it might be Hotbit. No, Hotbit is the Beyond the Summit guy.
Yes.
But anyway, I digress. When it really boils down to it, if you want to have that sort of loyalty aspect, you want to have that long tenured fan base, Melee is a great place to do it. We don't need a lot. When it boils down to it, we're playing for 70% of the $7. You know what I mean? Like that's how it boils back. We play for the love of the game. We play for a lot of bragging rights. Like bragging rights really go a long way in the Smash community, and we play for, and that's our big selling point is we just want to be better than everyone else. And that's what I think is so cool.
It is amazing that we get to this point. I don't think it happens just by FlyQuest saying, you know what, yeah, sure, let's do it. Fuck it, why not? I think that the Salt Mine and Ace, All Chat Esports, has a lot to do with inspiring other orgs to start to say, well, hey now, we could probably do something like that. Definitely inspiring to all the other TOs who run online weeklies to say, you know what, I think my time is worth a $5 entry. And to have a little bit of a prize pool here and there. Not everybody's doing 250 or 300 like All Chat Esports, and then especially not the FlyQuest $1,000 prize pool each week for the foreseeable future, like you said. But I like the fact that there's been a bit of a ramp up process, and I will give credit to where credit is due. Slumlord was saying on Twitter, I think All Chat gets a little bit of credit here, and I agree with that. I think that when you have sort of little dominoes fall, it doesn't always lead to results like this, because sometimes it just fizzles out and there you have it. But I'd like this because I also want to connect it to the idea, and I don't know how legit this is, but how legit do you think it is, all these people coming in the past, I would say 4 or so months, and starting to really ramp up these sort of higher cost, higher money, better production value kind of stuff, higher price pools? How much do you think it has to do with the Nintendo Circuit announcement? I only am trying to think of what that matters here, because in the past, the promise of circuits always got big esports orgs interested in Melee. I think we didn't necessarily have, breaking news, this is going to happen soon, back in the 2013 to 2014 time. I just know that with all the big exciting stuff that was happening at around the time, and the promise of we could do a circuit in the near future with Smash 4 and Melee, that was sort of the underlying tones before it got fizzled out. I think had a lot to do with the promise of that circuit that never did end up happening, but it seems like it'll happen for real this time. I'm wondering, what do you see? Is there any correlation there?
I think there's definitely, some underlying, people talking in the woodwork. There's not, again, no one's making any official statements. No one's making any actual official big name investments and moves quite yet, because as we've seen in the past, Nintendo is notoriously flaky. They're notoriously, apprehensive to do anything specifically with Melee, but also specifically to invest in their esports audience. Because Nintendo, like, I always was never a big Nintendo sellout, but I just recently bought a Switch for the first time, and I love casual gaming. Casual gaming is a great time playing some Pokemon, playing some Legend of Zelda, playing some Super Mario. It's a good time. It's a good way to chill with your girlfriend, chill with your family, and then just relax, take it easy, have a good time. But when the really big selling point is Nintendo's only big competitive audience is their speedrunning community and their Smash community, and ARMS and whatever that kind of flops.
Splatoon, shout
They,
outs to Splatoon.
Splatoon's sick. Yeah, Splatoon's amazing. But then, that's 3 games out of their pantheon of, dozens upon hundreds of different titles. In which case, if you want to invest in the casual audience, you want to invest in the casual atmosphere, I completely understand that. But there's no reason that you can't invest a little bit, especially to acknowledge the success of the grassroots scene. And just with a little bit of investment, a little bit of push, especially when you're comparing things like FlyQuest or Red Bull or Beyond the Summit or all these different third-party organizations investing a lot more, especially in comparison to like their purse size. A drop in the bucket is what FlyQuest could be potentially investing versus something that Nintendo could realistically be investing for the same market share. So if you take, like, let's say that $1,000 a month is 0.05% of the FlyQuest monthly budget. If you're putting 0.05% of the Nintendo monthly budget into competitive Smash, that's like a $10,000 tournament once a month.
Yeah.
Like easily. Like that's like you toss that over your shoulder and be like, all right, Melee, you can have this 10 grand, and we would all lose our freaking minds, man. Oh my god, $10,000 pot bonus once a month. Oh my god, we're all gonna go to X amount of thing, and that's an easy circuit. They just have to write us a check once a month, and we'll do the rest. Realistically, that's not that difficult. They just got to be like, okay, you guys do what you got to do. Here's 10K. Have a good time. Throw our logo everywhere. Easy peasy clap. Dusted, not a problem. And to me, of course, as a third-party representative and someone who's invested in the competitive scene and has been for a long time, that doesn't seem like a big deal to me. But of course, I don't understand legality of it, the any sort of branding recognition, marketing, of course, the tiptoeing the line of what it means to have, like intellectual properties being used, whether that be modding Pokemon Stadium to be frozen, whether that be any sort of use of UCF or modded controllers. Of course, that comes down to intellectual property, and there's a lot of legality that goes into it. And I'm not going to pull hairs about that because there's plenty of other esports and big name companies that very much so encourage their communities to mod and to improve and, of course, show their passion to quote unquote make their already great product better. And I know that's been a huge mentality, especially like of like the people who made Team Fortress, the people who made I know there's been a lot of cool Halo mods that have gone on and shown a lot of success. And those companies didn't throw C&Ds. Those companies weren't knocking down doors and throwing people in jail for, modding their Switch so people can get free games. Well, Nintendo just did that, but we're not going to talk about that yet.
But that is the truth, because
yeah.
Nintendo has not been the company that's been excited by the most passionate sects of their community. They look at the people who put in the most effort and the most time, and they treat them as like a liability. That's what the word I was looking for. They treat them as a liability because those are the people who are going to modify the games. And Nintendo seems to place more of an emphasis on controlling their IP as far and wide as they can. And so when it comes to having a circuit this upcoming summer, I assume, for North America, for Smash Ultimate and for Smash Melee, that's what we're talking about. Theoretically, it sounds great because all they got to do is write a check and let Panda handle the rest, because I think that's what we're all hoping the formula is going to be, that Panda gets enough money to be able to make this ship fly all across the North American circuit, if that's 3 events and then a finals, or if that's 5 events and then a finals. We're really hoping that it's something to that effect, you and I in particular, but we also recognize that in the past we have seen more than plenty enough examples and evidence that Nintendo places so much of an emphasis on controlling their IP that they're not going to sneeze at canceling this whole thing because of somebody. I mean, it doesn't have to be much, it feels like to me. their eyes will be on this more than the average grassroots event, certainly. So it will be hard to do things like UCF or like Frozen Pokemon Stadium. I would be super shocked if they even let one thing slip by on something they had more than just their name on. If they're putting money into it, that seems like a whole step up for them. So I'm hoping for the best because I trust Panda, but I like the idea, going back to the FlyQuest thing, go back to investment into Melee and Smash in general. I like the idea that other organizations are starting to feel that momentum into the summer. I'm hoping that Nintendo allows everything to go through to the best of their ability. They can just chill out just a little bit, and then I think it'll only build from there for the next year or however far into the future it goes.
Yeah, and this definitely like kind of toes the line. Like we've rarely seen a lot of investment into the modding scene, but of course, Smash has an illustrious modding scene. We have the P plus community, we had the PM 3.6, and of course the 0.1, 1.0, 2.0, everything in between. PM and the modding community, whether that be even fan made games like Smash Flash and Smash Flash 2. I know there's been a really cool documentary that just came out about the history of Smash Flash. I turned it on, watched the first 2 minutes, got hooked, and then immediately had to go to work. So I will be end up watching that documentary this week, and I'm really excited. So whoever made that documentary, shout outs to you.
Shout
I'm
outs.
gonna be watching that for this weekend. It's gonna be one of my little tickets for the week. But Mango announcing a collab with Sabre. Sabre, another prolific P plus player, that they're going to be doing a God of the Mod, I believe is what it is called, on Mango stream every single Monday, very akin to Toph's King of the Cube, but is going to be show matches in the P plus community. Don't know if we have a like a fight card for who's actually going to be competing this Monday, but I'm super excited because one of my intros specifically to the competitive Smash community was the PM scene. We had actually had a pretty solid PM scene down in Cincinnati. One of the Cincinnati local players who was a very, very good game and watch, his tag was I-19, was the, I think, top 3 in Ohio for PM, and then subsequently top 10 in Cincinnati with Game and Watch and Melee. So super, super cool. And so I've always kept a close eye on the PMP plus community. And P plus Peach is fun. P plus Peach is really cool and really quirky, and she has a command grab in the air now that you can't do aerial turnip, of course. But I digress. We have a really cool opportunity to see how the P plus community can take this mainstream audience that Mango has, top 2 in viewership for not just Melee, but Smash in general. I believe only getting beat out by Hungrybox as of right now on concurrent Twitch viewership. How do you think personally that this translation is going to happen, merging both these major scenes and bringing a huge potential audience to check out P plus?
I love the fact that Mango wants to platform P plus. I think that there's always been a certain amount of dislike between P plus, Melee, and Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate because there's just a little bit of pride about your game being the best. And I know that was at its peak in terms of the most contentiousness back when Brawl first dropped, but I think that P plus did a lot. All the P plus people I've talked to, like that, when that mod became a thing back in 2013, in particular 2014, when it was really, really popular, sort of helped to bridge the gap between everybody and give everybody the opportunity to experience a little bit of a different flavor. And then, of course, the PM development team having to shut down with not an official cease and desist, but more or less being encouraged, you just need to disappear, and it had to go underground. And I mean underground, like more than Melee and Smash 4 and Ultimate underground, emerging with these shadow majors last year, having to do Shipwrecked and Jailbreak. I think that was the one for main stage, excuse me. And so cool now that we've gotten to this point that the Melee community, and I think to a lesser extent Ultimate, but especially the Melee community, embracing P plus and saying, you're one of us. I think that Mango in particular, sharing his large audience, his large platform with an amazing mod, with an amazing community, people who really care about this game still, especially people like Sabre, who does a lot of behind the scenes work. I mean, was one of the main people responsible for bringing Jailbreak out. And I think it's so cool that it's Sabre who gets to sort of help bridge this together. It still feels very, very grassroots. And I think that a little part of it is Mango Mango having something like God of the Mod, and then he goes and win the Nintendo Circuit in the summer, being
That'd be pretty
like,
sweet.
like check out my stream, and Nintendo goes no. But I love that idea. I think it's very very cool. I don't know how Sabre pulled it, but I know that this isn't happening because nobody can force Mango to do anything. So I know that this is something that Mango is excited about doing. So that's very very cool. It'll be Sosa versus the Doctor, two very good players. Very good players. I'm excited to see it on Monday night.
Yeah, should be a good show. And I've been like seeing a little bit of Mango playing Magi on NP Plus on his stream a little bit here and there. And that's been happening for the last couple of months. And I know that Mango definitely has a huge vested interest in the P plus scene, so he definitely enjoys the game. And if you want to get content out of Mango, he just has to enjoy doing what he's doing on stream. So definitely P plus is one of those name things. He's big into Mario Kart for a long time. Of course, he's dropping some Valorant streams from time to time. So maybe we'll see some sort of a Mango X Riot Games collaboration at some point. Maybe he'll get invited out to some sort of pro-am invitational. Honestly, Mango would grip it and rip it on a pro-am like Valorant stage. He's kind of cracked on the sticks. He's good at clicking heads, but Mango's just a gamer, man. I've got nothing on the kid that way. But speaking of being just some god level gamers, we had a pretty interesting tweet coming out from the Crimson Blur this past week, saying that with the recent exodus of Wizzy and Plup specifically out of Florida, all of a sudden Florida is not by and large the best melee region in the country. Of course, when in the prime time of Wizzy, HBox, M2K, Plup, Gatsu, that core four, five, six players, there was no case that any other region, maybe with the exception of peak SoCal, had any shot at beating Florida in a 5v5 or 10v10.
Yeah,
But
it's just too
now
top heavy.
yeah, it was so top heavy. And even when you go down to, you're pulling up names like Croto, Mr. Ellis, Komodo, and you're still having those top 30, top 50 level talent so deep into the Florida pool. But now with these two absolute top five hitters out of Florida, Wizzy moving to Texas and then Plup over to Oregon respectively, I kind of want to discuss who is, the next hidden boss, major 10v10 contender for one of the best melee regions in the country.
I think it just means that we need to do this again, right? Because there were a few crew battles. Not that I was super involved at the time, but I went back and watched the tape. There was this really weird East versus West Coast crew battle, and Ken was just uselessly sitting on the couch. I remember somebody making a video about this, just all the supercuts of Ken sitting there, not really knowing what to say because he didn't have a microphone or something. I think that was pretty heavily in East Coast favor. I remember East Coast winning. All that to say, things have been fairly stagnant with crew battles. There's occasionally interest in something a little bit smaller scale, but in terms of having a big East versus West or region versus region, I think maybe the big one last year in July, the online tournament that the Rollback Rumble team put on, shout outs to Rollback Rumble for that was an insane, it was almost 2 weeks straight of different tournament brackets. And I think the region crew battle was one of them. I remember seeing discourse about it. I think I remember Midwest winning, actually. But all that to say, that would be the last time I remember there being, oh, yeah, we got to do region versus region. This is a whole big thing. We got all these really good players who are actually going to be showing up and playing. This is cool. And then it just sort of, now we're here. It's not been a year yet, but I would love to see a renewed look at things and going, what can SoCal do? Because, of course, SoCal goes deep. That's the story there, right? And what about Tri-State? There's a lot of good players who are, of course, because of the amazing tournaments that the Nightclub puts on and other East Coast brackets that happen on a fairly regular basis, there's a lot of power-ups in Tri-State. New England's kind of going into a little bit of a sleeper mode. I would say that Florida still has plenty of players. They're just not as top heavy anymore, right, of course. So that's still a thing. And then we have Midwest. And I don't even know how to divide that up because that's it's a whole line. Right. Do you put Texas with Ohio? I don't think you do that. So what do you do there? For me, I don't have a high enough familiarity with the deepness of each region. I can think of players from different spots. Of course, Michigan would be really good with Ginger. And I guess Is Ben in Michigan, or is Ben close enough to Michigan to be
Ben's
Michigan?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Okay, so if we put those two together, that's a pretty good starting lineup right there. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because you would be the one who's a little bit better with being familiar with how deep everybody goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of a crew battle has always excited me. I think that I like to think, I'm a big macro thinker. I like to think of the big picture and how these regions are developing, especially now with the onset of Slippy, where a lot of these lower up and coming players are being significantly more shown in the limelight. There's a lot more of an idea of, in a top five, 5 versus 5 crew battle, it's all star power in the grand scheme of things. So that's why Florida was so dominant. It was literally all top 10 players in the top 5, in
Right.
their top 5 of Florida, which was disgusting. The worst player being Gatsu, and Gatsu's insane. So I'm finding this thread here, and we have a lot of these representatives pulling some really cool names out of these top 10s. And so the first reply was Salt, who is a prolific Texas Falcon. He says Texas looking pretty good. So Salt, Bobby Big Balls, Wizzy, of course, new recently Texas resident Wizzy, Albert, Billy Bo Peep, SFOP, Justice, SDJ Pappy, Palpa, and then on the bench you have the Leaf and Dark Hero. Dark Hero, best player in West Texas, box style Marth, the most consistent and interesting utilization of pivots I've ever seen. He's a good friend of mine. And the Leaf, again, solid player. Those guys are on the bench. So you have the worst player on that roster being Palpa, who is a very, very solid Jigglypuff and has great wins, has wins over Bobby Big Balls, has wins over SFOP, and just a really, really, really solid player. So Texas has a solid chance for taking that, because just on depth alone. But then again, you have to keep scrolling through this thread. And of course, Ryobeat, second tweet in this thread, Aklo, Jflex, Wally, Just Jason, Jojo, Swooper, Mop Money, Whiskers, Smuckers, Slocks, and Ryobeat is on the bench. Like Ryobeat, former top 50 player in the world. And of course, he didn't even mention IBDW. IBDW also on that list. So on the new list, he actually has it lined out. SoCal versus Tri-State. Cody, Aklo, Jflex, Wally, Just Jason, Jojo, Swooper, Mott, Smuckers, and Whiskers. Whiskers has an H-Box win. He's a Yoshi player. He's kind of goated. And then on SoCal, Mango, Lucky, Kadoran, Fiction, Face Roll, S2J, Null, Android Zero, Franz, and Casper. So definitely a lot more top-heavy star power-wise than it would be for SoCal. So I do think SoCal probably would still be the best region, at least in a 10v10. But when it really comes down to it is how much can that lower end, so I say lower being in like huge air quotes, because Smuckers and Whiskers and Franz and Casper would, if I had to play them in a 1-to-5, I wouldn't take a game. Like those guys would beat me so fast, my head would spin. So, but it really boils down to, what does your 7 through 10 look like?
So we have to cut it off here for the official recording, but if you want to listen to more of this, first of all, tell us that you want to hear more, because this is our testing episode. Please let us know in the comments below. But also, I'll put this up on the Patreon for all Patreon subs, so you don't have to be at the level of whatever I put it at. You can just sub to any of them, and you will get access to the full recording that we have, because we're going to talk about the Steam Deck and what that means for the Smash community. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us.
Guys, I'm Hada. I was on the podcast previously a couple weeks ago. Thank you so much to Cypher003 for having me out once again. I think I'm really excited for this potential project. If you guys like having me on the mic, if you guys like having me on this cool little talk show podcast sort of style. Also, if you guys want to retcon some cool names for this project, would love to have it see in the comments or on the Patreon comment threads. Would love to see that as well. Of course, you can always find either of us on Twitter and shout us out. But if you guys want to find me, I'm at HeyHada, HeyHada, on Twitter as well as Twitch. Been streaming a lot of League of Legends recently. I don't know how good that is for my mental health, but we're doing it regardless. I'm just I've been fiending decline, but yeah, I've been playing. Also been doing a little shiny hunting with my girlfriend on Brilliant Diamond, which is a good time. But yeah, if you guys really want to do me a solid, please follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is a little lacking in comparison to a lot of my other socials. I hit 1,200 on Twitch, which is super sick. Shout outs to my Twitch community. Love that. But only 300 on Twitter. Guys, come on, bump the numbers up. People can't take me seriously with just 300 followers. Just kidding. But
boost the serotonin, boost the numbers.
Yeah. Guys, please validate my existence with internet numbers. Come on.
Mm.
It's what I live for. But and I'm excited to see what happens next week in Melee.